Yeah, probably. It's a scary place. I've known Kristina for several years now. I don't know, met her here or exactly where. You kind of lose track over time. One thing I can tell you absolutely, with absolute certainty about Kristina is she will not sugarcoat anything. She sent me a text one day that said, "I'm not little Debbie. I don't sugarcoat shit." And I appreciate that. She is not afraid to admit when she's not doing well, which I can respect that, because a lot of us walk around with rainbows shooting out of our asses, and she's not one of those people. Like I said, I've known her for a long time and considered her a really good friend. This is where the big gasp will happen. A while back, she asked me to be her sponsor. Yeah. And like I say, I have never had a sponsee be this diligent or as diligent as she is. She calls me every week. So she follows direction, and I've heard her speak before. I know she's going to do a good job, and she's going to talk about active recovery. And so with that, I'll let her tell her story. So I'll give you Kristina.
I'm really short. I'm an addict named Kristina. I need a moment of silence so I can get out of my own way and out of my own head. I'm an addict named Kristina. This is amazing. It looks like a Saturday night in here. I am honored to be here tonight and speak at Ripley. My first Ripley convention was in the spring of 2006. I met this guy on the internet, which will be a part of my story, I guess. We're married now, so I think it's okay. But he's from Marietta, Ohio, and he talked about this convention, his regional convention. Every time we would talk, he talked about his regional convention, and asked me to come up sometime. And my first one was in May of 2006. I had a little over a year clean, and I was terrified of you. I grew up in Portsmouth, Virginia, southeastern Virginia. That's near Virginia Beach. And NA looks different down there. Same program. It took me a long time to realize that. Same spiritual principles. It just looked different, and we did things differently. But I came up to this convention, and my first sponsor gave me an assignment, and that was to get phone numbers from women. And I think I tried to hide, between the assembly hall and the classrooms, the entire weekend. And this crazy guy from Bucks County kept finding me and saying, "Are you isolating? Are you isolating? Are you isolating?" And I was. Thank you. And I remember on Saturday night, during the day, I asked the guy that I was with, I was like, "Would you just take me back to the hotel?" Because we weren't staying on grounds. And I cried the whole way there because I was terrified of reaching out. And I heard someone share today in the welcome meeting about that. And, if I find you, I hope I get to give you a hug, because I know what it's like to come here and there's hundreds of people and I feel alone, because I'm really comfortable isolating inside of here. And it's hard for me to just go, "Hi, I'm new here. Can I have your number?" And I'm crying on the phone with my sponsor. And, my boyfriend at the time introduced me to a young woman from Cincinnati. And we're still really, really close to this day. And thus I began this process of opening up. And now Ripley is my second home. This is my home, I'm more comfortable at this convention than I am in my old hometown convention, which is weird, And the reason I share that is because this year's theme is Country Roads to Recovery. And I think I counted this was my 14th Ripley convention, which fucking blows my mind. And I'm still coming back. And now instead of being that like girl isolating over there by the assembly hall, as I know so many of you, and I get hugs all day today. Thank you for the 107 times I heard, "Are you nervous?" But most of all, thank you for the hugs and the love. It feels really good to be here, where I feel comfortable. Like I said, I grew up in southeastern Virginia. I believe I had a fairly normal childhood. I think that's relative. But, I don't think I ever needed anything. I think I wanted a lot of things because even as a kid, I was the potential addict, and there was never really enough. There was never enough books. I'd like to say that probably books were my first drug of choice. Theater was probably my second drug of choice when I got into high school. Really early on, I felt less than. I know what it feels like to sit at Thanksgiving dinner with my family and feel like I don't belong. I know what it feels like to sit in this room with all of you and feel like I belong. But that's how I felt through most of my early life, was that I didn't belong. I was weird, and people told me I was weird all the time. My own mother, to this day, she's like, "You're really weird." And I'm like, "Thanks, Mom." Today, that's not such a bad thing, but, I never felt like I belonged, and I believe that I was always looking for a way out. I believe I was always looking for an escape. I found that in books when I was little. At some point, my parents divorced, and I had a really hard time dealing with that, and I started writing poetry, and I found an escape there. And then when I was in high school, I found theater, and I didn't have to be me. I can put on a mask, and I can go on stage, and I can be, the Sheriff of Nottingham. I can be Alice in Wonderland. I can be anybody but Kristina, and I hid behind that for a long time. I was really, really comfortable not being me. And I was really, really terrified of me because I wasn't comfortable in my own skin, and I damn sure didn't love myself. That was a terrifying thought. I went to college. College is a huge part of my story because I was in college for 10 years. Active addiction and recovery, so it is a huge part of my story. I first used when I was in high school. I think it was junior prom or something like that. Like, I just wanted to be a cool kid. I wanted to fit in. I wanted to have the greatest after prom party, and I wanted all the cool kids to come, and I wanted to be the talk of the school on Monday, and I wanted to be loved, from everything out here because I didn't know how to do it in here. And that was the first time I ever used, and I remember that feeling, that feeling of escape. That feeling of camaraderie, with other people, and feeling like I belonged. And I chased that for years. I went to college, and I was a straight-A high school student. I'm smart, and that's scary. My first sponsor told me, "You better stupid yourself up, kid, because you'll smart yourself right back out there." She handed me my first basic text and told me to read the black part because she didn't need my interpretation. And I needed her when I got here, like really bad. But I did. I went to college, and immediately this feeling of I don't belong, I don't fit in, I'm not good enough, I don't belong here, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, hit me all at once. My first day of college, I'm in the student center bathroom, like throwing up in the toilet, and the dean of students is holding my hair behind my head going, "It's going to be okay," and I was like, this is not a good sign. And that's how it was for years. And, and I've shared about, I remember, when I progressed from alcohol, and because alcohol was the first drug that I picked up. And, after that, I remember the first time that I really got high. I remember that moment because I thought I found the answer. I remember being at the corner of J. Clyde and Jefferson Avenue in Newport News, Virginia. I remember what song was on the radio. I remember who I was with. I remember what day it was because I thought I found the answer. And I just took off from there. In our basic text, it talks about, doesn't matter like how long we were out there or how it's all downhill. It's all downhill. And my story was very fast. and it was all downhill. I went to detox the first time. I got clean at 21. I picked up for the first time at 17, and I got clean at 21, which means I found a lot of pain really fast. And some days I'm grateful for that, but it was also a struggle. I know what it's like to be young and in these rooms. I have a sponsor who got clean at 17. That shit blows my mind. Again, I'm like, whoa. I watched her celebrate her 21st birthday clean. It was such a cool thing when she called me and she's like, I'm clean and I'm 21. And I was like, it's so awesome. But I went to detox for the first time in December of 2004. And, the greatest thing that happened was that I got introduced to Narcotics Anonymous, because I didn't know we existed. I thought the other fellowship was like on TV. It didn't exist, like AA is only in the movies. Yeah. And so I went to this, this hospital in Portsmouth, Virginia. My parents were like, okay, either we're going to kick you out or you're going to go get help, And at that point I was terrified of living on the streets, and it was like, okay, I'll go get help. And my answer when I was in detox that time was, I'll just marry the guy that I'm dating and using with, and it'll really piss my dad off, and my parents will get off my back. And I had this whole scheme concocted, and I'm calling the justice of the peace, from the yellow pages in detox, grand ideas, while he's still out there using. And he's like, oh, when you get out, it'll be fine. Just, you can come be with me. Oh my gosh. But these guys came in through H&I, hospitals and institutions, and this one addict told his story, and for the first time ever, I felt like somebody understood me. For the first time ever. I heard this guy share his story, and I thought, holy shit. And he told me about Narcotics Anonymous and how it changed his life. And it blew my mind. And I have a friend from down home who lives with me up here now, and he likes to tell the story about how that guy left H&I, and he's like, oh my God, there's this crazy girl, and she's like, where do I sign up? And it really was like that, because I was so excited to have found someone, that I felt like I could connect with. And I wanted this. I truly believe that on some level, I wanted to be clean. I didn't stay clean, and I don't know how long I stayed clean outside of detox. I used to say it was 12 days, and then through some step work over the years, I've discovered that maybe that wasn't true, because marijuana wasn't a drug, and in my brain. If I didn't put my lips on it, then I could not have possibly have been using. So, I don't really know how long I stayed clean out of that first day in detox. I think it was maybe 3 to 5 days, somewhere around there. But I did go to meetings. I did take a couple of suggestions. I left detox and I ran to a meeting. You guys told me, don't stop, don't walk, run. Sit in the ICU, the front row, and tell them you just got out of detox. And I really did do that. I ran to my first meeting. I introduced myself as a newcomer, and I said I just got out of detox, and I was shaking like a leaf, and I bought my first basic text. And I came to some meetings. I came to a few high after I used, and it was really uncomfortable to be around you guys high. And so I really left. And, I spent a lot of time that week in detox, and then that whatever week I had after that, disqualifying myself. I really relate to people who say, well, I'm just not that bad, because I understand that. I came in these rooms and I was like, well, I never did that, I never did that drug, I never did that, I'm just not as bad as you guys. Maybe I don't really belong. I could not see past the surface. And it's really hard to do that when we're not doing anything else. The only suggestion I took was to go to a meeting. I didn't get a sponsor, or anything else. So I got high. And my clean date is February 11th, 2005. So I left detox New Year's Eve in 2004 and got clean again, like really got clean, in February the following year. So when it's all downhill, all those things I said I didn't do, I'd never do, I'm not as bad as you, I did them all in the span of like a month and a half. I don't know what I was trying to prove, you know, but I knew that in the end I wanted to die. You know, my first sponsor told me to never forget my last high or I'm doomed to repeat. She told me to never forget where I came from and to remember what it felt like. You know, and the last time that I got high, I had traded my car, which was my home, for that last fix. And I'm sitting in the back seat of my own car, wondering why this person is kicking me out of it. You know, like I couldn't make the connection. Yeah. And I dated someone through most of my active addiction. And, you know, we were together that night, and it was freezing. It was February. Even in southeastern Virginia, it's fucking cold in February, you know? And he looked at me that night, and he's, you know, the drugs had run out. The money had run out. The scheming had run out. All of it was done, you know? And I was tired. And he looked at me, and he said, I love you. I'm going to go find a place for us to stay. I'll see you later. And the next time I saw him, there was a sheet of bulletproof glass between us, and I was celebrating a year clean. I have seen him in meetings once when I went home. You know, he has not found what we have found yet. And through that entire, you know, no matter what happened in that relationship today, you know, I have peace with that. I have peace with him. And the only thing I wish is that he finds what we have found. You know, the last time I heard from him was this past February, and he had caught another weapons charge, and he was going to prison, and he was mad at me because this is what I have today. And all I could say was, dude, you can have it too. I just can't give it to you, you know. So the last night, he's gone, I'm cold, I'm walking through Portsmouth, Virginia, and I don't know what to do. You know, I didn't know where to go. I didn't know what to do. At one point, I stood on an overpass, and, you know, I grew up in the South, so I grew up in a really religious Southern Baptist family, and that's you know, that's great. It just wasn't for me. And I just stood on this overpass, and I really wanted to die. That was my bottom. I stood on an overpass in Portsmouth, Virginia, and thought about, I just want to kill myself. You know, I couldn't go on using, and I couldn't go on living, and yet I didn't have the balls to kill myself either. You know, and so I stood on that overpass, and I was like, look, God, they told me you were here my whole life, so fucking prove it now, asshole. Like, here I am. You know, and I just kept walking. You know, sometimes when I tell this part of my story, I feel like Dory from Finding Nemo, like, just keep swimming. Like, I just kept walking. I really did. I walked forever. And at some point, I looked up, and I saw where I was. I was in my grandparents' neighborhood, and then I started running. And I got to my grandparents' front porch. It was probably like 5 in the morning, so I knew they were awake. And because they're old, and I don't know why, but just kidding. But you know, I rang the doorbell, and my grandmother, I'm short, and she's shorter, okay? So my grandmother answers the door, and my grandfather came to the door, and the only thing I clearly remember from that morning was my grandfather saying, "Come on in, gal." You know, and I literally collapsed. And these people were terrified of me. You know, years later, it was actually about a year ago, I asked my grandmother to tell me about that morning. I wanted to know what it was like from her eyes, you know, to see her oldest grandchild dope sick, you know, laying on her living room floor. And she told me that it was terrifying. They didn't know if I was there to rob them. They didn't know if my boyfriend was going to barge in behind me and I was just playing a trick on them. They weren't sure if I was going to live or die. They were just scared. And that was hard to hear. And it was extremely humbling. Because, I really wanted to believe when I got here that the only person I harmed was myself, and that's not the truth. These people, they undressed me, they bathed me. I had been wearing the same clothes for months at this point. My grandmother said that she managed to save my pants and sweater, but the underwear and socks just had to go. There was no salvaging them. It's really important for me today to wear clean underwear in recovery. She loves telling that part of the story, too. She tried to feed me, God bless her, but, my grandmother bathed me, and then she called my parents. And I, had finally managed to kind of pass out in the bed, and my mother comes and, shakes me at 11 a.m., and she's like, get up, and, and I did, and I remember sitting in my grandparents' living room, and my mom looks at me, and there's my stepdad, and my father, and my mother, and my grandparents, and my mom's like, what do you want to do? And in my heart, I knew I was done. I knew it. And I said, I want to come home. And she said, what you don't realize is that you don't have a home. You're 21, figure it out. We've been down this road before. And, my mom is still actively using today, but I thank God every day that she found the strength to say those words to me. And I was really angry then. I could not believe that she said that to me. So I asked to go back to detox. I did. And God, I'd never felt so alone. My own parents didn't want me. And then I walked back into Narcotics Anonymous that morning and picked up a white key tag, and you guys loved me. You hugged me. You said, welcome back. Where have you been? We missed you. Keep coming back. My own dope man didn't want me back, okay? I ran into him years later in a grocery store in Portsmouth, Virginia, and he was like, I'm so glad you're clean. Shit. And dude, I had money. And I came back to Narcotics Anonymous, and this has been my family ever since, and it continues to be. I got my first sponsor. I think I had 7 days clean, and she was sharing, because I was at a speaker meeting, and she shared her story, and it was my story, and we didn't look anything alike, and we didn't sound anything alike, because she's this short little black woman from Brooklyn, New York, who told me to take the cotton out of my ears and shove it in my mouth, because if she wanted to learn how to use, she'd fucking ask me, And I needed her. I really needed her when I got here, because I'm this smart college kid who's going to figure this shit out. I'm going to write a paper about how to, graduate Narcotics Anonymous. I needed her. I needed her to tell me to stupid myself up. I needed her to tell me to read the black part. I needed her to tell me to work the steps or die, motherfucker. Keep it simple, stupid. I needed her, I spent my first, year and a half with her sponsoring me. She took me through my first step, and she walked me through the basic text, because that's how she did it. You read the introduction and the symbol and who's an addict and what is an NA program, why are we here? And I had to read each one for 30 days and then write something on it and then share it with her. And I was like, what's the point? And now I find myself doing the same thing with my sponsees because it worked for me. I left that detox center and I lived in a homeless shelter, because in Virginia there's really nowhere for you to go. I lived in a homeless shelter and I did everything I could. I called people I didn't know and asked them for meetings. I asked the staff for bus passes, and damn it, I got to a meeting because you guys told me to put as much effort into my recovery as I did into staying high, and I was going to make it. And I was going to do it. And you know what? For a while, it's because I had something to prove. My parents were like, you're not going to make it. I was like, yeah, watch me. So that got me through the first year. But, I just started taking suggestions because I didn't do it the first time. And I was terrified of being back out there. I left that homeless shelter. I lived in a halfway house for a little while in Newport News, Virginia, and I did the same thing. I took buses, I called people, and I lived in a neighborhood where I was allowed to take the bus when it was daylight to the meeting, and then when it was dark, I had to make sure to get a ride home because it wasn't safe for me to take the bus anymore. And you know what? I just did it. I did the next right thing after the next right thing because I didn't know what else to do. You know, I had 52 days clean when I got arrested. I was on my way to a meeting, and my mom called, and she's like, "The police are here, and they have 24 warrants for your arrest." I was like, "Okay." And then I proceeded to bawl. My arresting officer knew me from the streets, and he knew I was clean, and so he gave me the opportunity to turn myself in. And my parents took me to the jail, and it was like a 35-minute drive. And you know what? You know who I called? I called my sponsor. You know, I got on the phone with my sponsor, and I stayed on the phone with my sponsor the entire way to that jail. And she just loved me and told me to do the next right thing, and she would be here for me. Narcotics Anonymous has never failed to show up for me when I ask for help. But it doesn't always just appear on my front door. You know, I have to ask for help. My parents, actually, they did bail me out of jail because I was clean. That car that I traded to get high, my dad took it back and sold it for my bail money. I was really grateful for that, actually. Thank you. And I fought in court through a huge chunk of my first year in recovery. And I shared in every meeting, and I didn't care if you didn't want to hear about it anymore. Okay? Like, I was scared. And that's what I was taught to do. I shared in every meeting, like, I'm terrified of going to prison. And I was facing 30 years, in the women's penitentiary in Virginia. And I was scared. And I just kept sharing about it. And, when I went to jail, when I went to court, you guys were there. I didn't go to prison. I'm here. I was sentenced to an indefinite period of probation, which I was relieved for. But you know what? Through doing the right thing in this program, I was released in 2008. There were some things I wanted to accomplish. I went back to school. There was some professional licenses that I wanted to get that I couldn't get if I was still on probation. And I worked really hard. And because I had done the right thing for so long, my probation officer fought for me. They're not the enemy when we're doing the right thing. That was something I learned. I had 12 probation officers in recovery because they told me I was too easy of a case, So I had a great attorney who fought for me. It's amazing what happens when we do the right thing. I got off probation, and I just kept living. And I love this program. I've grown up here. Like I said, I had my first sponsor, and we parted ways after about a year and a half because our lives changed. She was exactly what I needed when I got here. But after a while, she wasn't anymore, and that's okay. I was terrified to break up with her, She had gone back to grad school, and she was super busy, and I was going, I figured out when I was hiding my romantic relationship from my sponsor, either it really wasn't spiritual, or maybe I needed a new sponsor. I tell my sponsees that all the time. If you feel like you can't tell me something, it's either A, you're not supposed to be doing it, or B, you just need a new sponsor, okay? So I got honest about being in this relationship, and told her, I was like, well, I don't know, and I cried, and she told me it was okay, and she's still a part of my support group today, she's still really important to me. But I learned a lot from her. One of the other things she told me when I got clean was before I made a decision to sleep around in Narcotics Anonymous, I should think about my 1-year anniversary. And because where I got clean, we celebrate home group members, clean time with an anniversary celebration meeting. And tons of people would show up, and there's cards and balloons and a cake and all kinds of stuff. And she said, I want you to think about that. And do you want to look out in the room and see everyone who loved and supported you through your first year clean? Or do you want to look out in the room and see everybody you slept with and feel all of the guilt and shame? And I went, because I related to that, okay? I was that 21-year-old who would walk into bars and be like, we have to find a new bar. feel that here, okay? I felt that out there. I didn't want to feel it in here because I knew what that felt like. So like a really great newcomer, I just manipulated what she suggested to me and didn't sleep around in Narcotics Anonymous. I just chose people outside of Narcotics Anonymous. I did a great community service. I would go to bars and pick up my drunk guy friends and drive them home as their DD. I was saving your lives. That worked for about 6 months, by the way. About 6 months of participating in that behavior, and the scheming and the lying and the manipulating, that shit is hard work, okay? I don't think I realized how hard I was working in active addiction until I tried to do those things clean. I'm trying to hide it from my sponsor. I'm trying to hide it from the halfway house. I'm trying to hide it from my friends. I'm trying to hide it from myself, I'm just trying to hide. And at some point, I remember not enjoying it anymore. And I called my sponsor one morning and I said, okay, here's the truth, and I got honest, and that shit hurt, in a good way, because I grew. Because what I've learned is that sometimes I have to go through pain to grow in this program. I've become grateful for the really painful, shitty times in my recovery because they've become the most beautiful, awesome times in my recovery. I got honest with her. And she said, well, how's that working out for you? Which is still my favorite line to use on my sponsees who are all laughing right now. How's that working out for you? And I'm like crying, and I'm like, it's not working at all. And, what I realized was that I didn't have drugs to cover up my feelings. And that's what she was trying to tell me that first day I asked her to be my sponsor. And so I had this great idea. I won't sleep around anymore. I'll just date a virgin. And I had not yet figured out that a relationship really was not the answer, okay? And so I dated this guy, and he was really religious, and he wasn't one of us, and, he was a virgin, and everything would be perfect. And it wasn't. And he broke up with me on Christmas Eve, and I just, went crazy. And finally I got the point, I got the point. And I said, no more. I'm going to focus on me. I finally went to my sponsor and said, maybe we should start working on those step things. Because now I have 9 months clean and I haven't worked any steps. And I'm starting to feel it, And I did. I started working steps and things started to change. And that's what I keep realizing through this whole process is when I start to work the steps and then apply what I learned to my life, things generally get better. And when I go back to trying to do it my way, it's really not any fun anymore. People from my area know that I talk about this a lot. In my hometown, they built a new neighborhood with all these beautiful $500,000 homes, and it's gorgeous. And the main street is Kristina Way. And the first time we went by this neighborhood, my husband goes, oh my God, that's a painful street. I didn't get the joke the first time, by the way. But it truly is a painful street. And I started to work steps, and I started to focus on myself, and I started to let go of all, trying to find myself in another person, because what I didn't realize when I got here was the answer was always here. It was always here. It was here long before I picked up the first drug. It was there long before I picked up theater or books. It was always there, and I just kept denying this relationship with a higher power. We talk a lot about, you guys tricked me. I came here to stop using drugs. What I found was a relationship with a higher power and a relationship with myself, which is one of the most beautiful things I have today. So I did meet that guy on the internet. But I actually was honest. I got honest about it. I got a new sponsor. I got honest about liking this guy from Ohio. And we'll get there. And, and I started to be honest about what I was feeling and how I was thinking. And through getting that experience, strength, and hope from my sponsor, I was able to develop a really healthy romantic relationship. What? And it's still a process. It's still a process. We're married today. I cannot work his program for him. We'll die. He can't work mine for me. I'd kill him. I have to work on me. And yeah, there's times he drives me crazy, and I know there's times I drive him crazy. But as long as I work on myself, recovery happens in the process. Trust me, there's many times I'd like to be like, could you please just go call your sponsor? Leave me alone. But applying the steps to any area of my life can also include my marriage. I got a new sponsor around 2 years clean, maybe a year and a half clean. 2 years clean, I made the decision to move to Ohio from Virginia. I was living with my parents, who were using, my mom and my stepdad. And the real kicker was the night that my two younger sisters and my parents were at the table, and they're like having margarita night. And I walked through the kitchen on my way to an NA meeting, and my youngest sister goes, "Isn't it just a shame you can't drink these anymore?" And I was like, "You bitch," And I run out the door, and I go to a meeting, and I'm like, "I'm gonna kill her." The only fist fight I've been in recovery is with my youngest sister, and I got my ass kicked, okay? When they say if you don't practice humility, you will be humiliated, I understand that, all right? And she holds it over my head like a golden apple or something. Yes, no more fistfights in recovery. And I went to my sponsor and I said, I really want to go back to school. I'm not happy where I am, but I want to do this right, because I don't want to run anymore, because that's a huge part of my story is running. I'm really good at running. I mean, not physically because I'm a fat kid, but like running away, I have tried to outrun myself for so long. My first geographic change was at 19 years old. Ironically, I ended up in Ohio. I was using too many drugs in college, and some kid from Indiana told me about this amusement park in Sandusky, Ohio, and how you could work there all summer and make a lot of money. And so I did, and all I did was switch one drug for a legal drug that they didn't drug test for, and I partied all summer. And I was just as miserable when I left as when I got there, So I knew that geographic changes didn't work. And I worked with my sponsor, and I made a pros and cons list, and we made the decision for me to move. I'm so glad that some of my Athens family is here tonight, because that was a terrible first year. I had 2 years clean when I uprooted myself from my home in Tidewater, and I moved to this really strange town called Athens, Ohio. I have no using stories in Athens, Ohio. It's amazing. I ended up living 3 or 4 doors down from 2 recovering addicts. And we randomly found each other. And then they introduced me to another recovering addict. And I'm also in the middle of my 6th step. I should share that, because I spent a year sitting in pain on my 6th step. And these people in Athens kept telling me, you just can't see what we see yet. We're sitting in a meeting going, well, I didn't really find any real serenity until I worked the 7th step. And I wanted to be I hate you right now. And the fellowship there is very small. And, I know what it's like to be the only member of a home group. And, I really had to have the doors open. It was important to show up and open the doors to that meeting, because you never knew who was going to walk in and need to be there that night. That's where I learned that I hate being treasurer. I had to do it. And that's really where I think I really started to learn about service, because my life depended on it in that moment. Because when I got to Athens, several things happened. The law put a 6-month no contact order between my boyfriend and I, because we were both felons on probation. I did not know that law existed anywhere. And I didn't really know anybody. And you know what? I have to say, as devastated as I was that happened, I'm so grateful for it, because my recovery does not depend on him. It forced me to seek you guys out and build relationships that had nothing to do with my significant other, And I just did it. I went to meetings in Athens, and I started doing service, and I just fucking sat on my hands some days, and I just stayed clean Because sometimes all that matters is no matter what, And it was hard. I said college was a part of my story. It was important for me to go back to school. It was something I wanted to do for me. I've gotten 2 degrees in Narcotics Anonymous, and I couldn't have done it without you, because there were days I wanted to kill people. There were days I wanted to drop out of school. There were days I thought, I can't do this. And I would sit in a college classroom, and people would be like, let's go get a beer afterwards, and be like, I don't drink. And not have to go into my whole life story, just leave it at that. And you know what? I found normal people out there who are still my friends today, So my second sponsor and I lived 500 miles apart for years. Okay, and that worked for us for a while. We still did step work. My family's still in Virginia Beach, so I go home every 6 months or so to visit my family, and we do some step work, and we kept in touch. And you know what? Eventually, guys, that stopped working. I did not get honest when it stopped working. It stopped working a couple of years ago. But I get really comfortable in my own chaos. And then I got really comfortable in just the support group that I had, I didn't need to meet anybody else. I'm really comfortable with who I have right now, And then everything changed. I don't think I realized that I was really being complacent until it was almost too late, The last couple of years have been interesting, to say the least, I think. Everything changed, and it really hurt in the process. Some of it was awesome. I got married, which some days is a challenge. And most days it's pretty awesome. I watched one of my best friends find her bottom, and that was a painful process. I think people in this room can tell you I'm not afraid to call the cops on you if you threaten to kill yourself. My whole world flipped upside down in the last couple of years. Relationships changed drastically. People who I thought that I was close to, we drifted apart because we grow and we change, and hopefully it's for the better. And I found myself feeling really alone, calling my last sponsor going, I'm really alone, and being on my pity pot, and, having the greatest Kristina pity party ever. And I wanted to use really bad. And I sat in my home group, and I shared honestly about it because I don't know what else to do. And my sponsor told me, she said, do something different, Kristina. Just go do something different, I had never really gotten involved in service outside of a home group and sponsorship, because I said I will never get involved in area service, and I will never get involved in regional service. That shit's crazy. I will hurt somebody. I didn't want to do it, but I found myself feeling very isolated and in a dangerous space. And my sponsor told me to do something different. So I did. I went to my first area service meeting, and I was made secretary and activity subcommittee chair that day. Thank you. It gave me something to do, at least, and then within I think by the next area service, they made me alternate RCM or ASR, wherever you're from. And I went to my first regional service, and I fell in love. If you love chaos and you want, just get involved in service. Have some fun. I had so much fun, and it was terrifying because here I am. I feel like a newcomer again, okay? And I'm going to regional service and I'm going to area service, and my sponsor's telling me maybe you should get some new phone numbers. Are you kidding me? And then I find myself calling people, going, "This is Kristina. Do you remember me? Are you sure?" And it took me back to when I got clean, and I was calling people "This is Kristina. I met you in that meeting." And I forgot how freeing that was. How freeing it was to pick up the phone and just fucking call somebody and say, I've never talked to you before and I'm really fucking terrified right now, so will you just talk to me? How's the weather where you are? You know, and what has happened over the last couple of years is I have developed new awesome relationships. You know, I look around this room and I can see my family I made in Athens, my Bucks County family, you know, my family from the Appalachian Foothills area. Fairmont has become a second home to me. You know, all of you that I've met here in Ripley from so many different places, you know, and I still have my family down home in Tidewater too. No matter where I go, there is Narcotics Anonymous, and I forgot that. You know, I was so busy thinking that Kristina was still the center of the universe, you know, that I forgot that. And then I finally, in a meeting, when we do regional service here, a lot of times we have these meetings, you know, in Holt Lodge at night, you know, where we all get to kind of decompress and share, and it's like the best meeting ever. And I was really going through this space where I was like, I'm tired of being the person with the most amount of clean time sitting in meetings in my area and just being fucking egotistical about it. And so I would come to this meeting 4 times a year and, you know, and I finally got honest. I got honest about how my relationship with my sponsor wasn't working, that it had ended years ago, and then she disappeared. She just stopped calling, stopped writing. No one even saw her on Facebook anymore. She stopped taking my calls. I started calling people that she wasn't in meetings, and I am sponsorless. And I'm telling myself I'm okay, you know? When I finally asked Rob to be my sponsor, all of my sponsees breathed a collective sigh of relief and said, thank you. And I thought, it wasn't that bad, was it? And they were like, you have no idea. As here I am, working really hard to try to lie and manipulate my way through my own feelings. Again, it's a lot of work to do that shit today. And guys, I'm tired sometimes. I don't want to do it. It's so much easier to just be honest. It's so much easier to call up my sponsor and be like, I'm going to punch somebody in the face, you know, and have him talk me through that, you know. It's so much easier to get honest with somebody about how I'm feeling today. To get honest with myself first, because I'm fucking tired of running and hiding from myself, you know. I've started the steps over again, which is pretty awesome, because I really thought I had it all together for a while there. And new things have happened. It's not necessarily about the drugs anymore. I heard someone share in the steps 1, 2, and 3 workshop tonight, like, it's not necessarily about the drugs, but if I don't do something, it's going to be about the drugs really quick. You know, and thank you for sharing that, because that's a big part of my experience over the last couple of years. You know, if I don't do the next right thing, if I don't do something, it's going to be about the drugs really quick. You know, I've watched people with time go back out, and I've watched them come back in and pick up key tags, and it's hard. You know, I listen to them share about how hard it is. And I thank you for your experience, strength, and hope, you know, because I know that if I ever do go through that, I have you, just like through everything else. You know, I am never alone in this program unless I choose to be. I have been through a lot of stuff over the last 7+ years, you know. With a year clean, my cousin who lived in Wheeling was murdered. It was probably one of the worst experiences of my life. And I remember calling someone in the fellowship that night, and I couldn't. It was 6 months later when they found her body, and the police report was released on exactly what had happened and how it had happened, and it was gruesome. And I called someone from this fellowship, and I couldn't even say what was wrong because I was crying too hard. And I said, I need a hug. And they told me to go get one. And he still tells me that today, by the way. And I did, and I went to a meeting, and I raised my hand, I said, I'm an addict named Kristina, and I'm in pain, and then I proceeded to bawl. And after the meeting, addicts surrounded me, and they loved me through that process. They loved me through that process for years, because there was years of trial after that. And because of you guys and with you guys, it took me 6 years, but I finally went to her grave in June. I couldn't have done that without you. And there were 2 addicts with me that day. It was the day I spoke in Wheeling, as the entire Wheeling area remembers. It was a crazy day. But I was so grateful for that, and it was like I got to bring one chapter of pain to a close. And what I know today is that everything I go through in Narcotics Anonymous has a purpose, and it's usually because one of you is going to come into my life and you're going to need me. You're going to need my experience, strength, and hope, and we're going to grow together. I have been homeless in recovery. I have been hungry, I have dumpster dove for pizza behind Little Caesars in Athens, Ohio, just to make sure that I have a meal. And you guys showed up and made sure that I had groceries, and you loved me no matter what. My biggest reservation when I did my first step was that I wouldn't be able to stay clean if my grandmother passed away, and she passed away in April of 2008. And you guys were with me. You were with me in the car when I got the phone call. You were with me at the funeral. You were with me in my home group, and you're still with me today. I never have to go through anything in this fellowship alone unless I choose to. When Brandon and I got married in March of last year, almost our entire wedding party, with the exception, even the guy that married us, yes, with the exception of my siblings, were in recovery, or are in recovery now, because my maid of honor got clean after that. And it was such a cool experience to go through that with y'all, I can feel that I'm coming to an end. So this is where I've been. Recently, I told you I started working the steps again, and I have found myself in a lot of pain recently. I got clean a year and a half ago. I quit smoking because they told me I had to. And I'm grateful for that today. And it has been a process, and I did not realize how much I relied on that for so long. And I showed up in a meeting one night shaking because I had never been so homicidal in my entire life. And you guys have walked me through this process, and I can apply the steps to that too, and that's what I've been learning to do. And, recently I've been, trying to take care of my health physically, because that's become important to me, especially after I sat next to a sponsee in the hospital who had a life-threatening illness, and I'm telling her, you need to take care of yourself, as I get my blood work that says my triglycerides are sky high. So I'm like, maybe I should listen to myself, So I've been doing that, but what I realized was that I have all this anger, okay, this rage, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And I found another addict who I've watched go through this shit, and I asked them to be my sponsor, and they listened to me, and they loved me through that process. And you guys love me through that process. Sometimes you hate me through that process, but that's okay. You really love me. That's what I tell myself. And whatever gets me through the day. And it's getting better. And I'm just so bad about picking up that proverbial 2x4 every time I act out and beating myself relentlessly. And then I beat myself up, so I have to beat you up even more, because I can't just beat myself up, And it's just been a vicious cycle of anger. And this is the shit I'm working through in the steps right now, And for the last couple of weeks, I looked around and I realized I hadn't thrown anything in a couple of months. And I've gotten a little bit better. And I gave myself a break for the first time, I think, in a couple of years, and realized that everything's really going to be okay even if it isn't. When I did this last first step with my sponsor, what I realized was that when I act out on my sickest behaviors, when I allow my defects to become shortcomings, when I start driving on that flat tire, I degrade myself in my own eyes, just like our literature says. And I don't want to feel that pain today. I felt that pain when I got here, But I'm grateful that in this program we allow each other to hit spiritual bottoms and love each other through that process. So 3 times today I picked up the Living Clean book to a random page, and all these random paragraphs talked about sharing honestly. I have to admit, yes, I have been nervous all week. Monday at work, I realized what week it was, and I was like, oh my God. And I'm like running around, my office like a crazy person. There are several people who work with me here tonight, so they know what a crazy bitch I've been this week, and I'm sorry. It'll all be better on Monday, I swear. And I just kept telling myself that when we honestly tell our own story, someone will relate. And then I was reminded right before I got up here to remember to have fun. Because if I'm not having fun in recovery, I'm doing something wrong. Because even at my lowest, I still have fun, Then the last year, I've been to quite a number of concerts with a number of you in here, and we've had a blast, clean, having little impromptu meetings at set break together, clean, I have fun today. I danced more last Saturday night at my home group's 12th anniversary with my sponsor's daughter than I think I've danced most of my life, and I took ballet for 17 years. And I have fun today. So please, if you do anything this weekend, have fun. Have fun. Thanks for letting me share.